Okay, guys, today I want to look at Chapter 5, Tissues. Okay. Now, we just got through with Chapter 1, the basics of anatomy and physiology. Now we want to start going into a little bit greater detail by looking at the kind of tissues that you and I have inside of us. All right. There are four basic types of tissues. There's epithelial, connective, nervous, and muscle. Muscle and nervous, we know those. Connective kind of makes sense. That first one, epithelial, you may not have heard of a whole lot, okay? But we're going to go through what it is. And again, those four main types, there are different kinds of each one of those four types, okay? So there's not just four of them. There's several, but in each category, okay? So we're just going to look at the first one today. The first one is called epithelial tissue, okay? Now, what is epithelial tissue? Well, it's pretty much found throughout the body, on the surface of the body and inside the body. It's going to cover your body organs as well as line body surfaces. So you already got a pretty good idea of where this stuff would be located and what it's used for, right? Now, when you look at that and you see that it covers the body organs, so it's going to be on the inside. It's going to line the surface of the body, so it's going to be on the outside, right? And it's pretty much found everywhere inside and out of your body. It's got a basement membrane, a bottom layer that holds it in place so that it doesn't move around a whole lot, which is a good thing because you don't want to be able to take your skin and slide it all the way around your arm or your face. You don't want to do that, right? So you need some way to hold it in place. Okay? Usually doesn't have a super great blood vessel supply, so there you go. But it is replaced all the time. That tissue is constantly being made and broken down and replaced over and over again. Which again, if you're thinking about your skin, which is part of your epithelial tissue, it's constantly regenerated and made and then sloughs off after a while, right? Okay. Now, there are 9. Here's the sad, scary part. There are 9 different kinds of them, okay? And all 9 of them are going to do some sort of function, such as protection, secretion, absorption, excretion, and sensory reception, okay? That's a lot, isn't it? But each one of them does some of these things, or a lot of these things, or maybe only one of these things, okay? So let's look at them at each individual time. Now, the names are going to be somewhat large and maybe even confusing. I don't know, it depends upon how you look at it, but we're going to go through and we're going to break them down one at a time, okay? So first off, the first type of tissue is called simple squamous epithelium, okay? Simple squamous epithelium. That's a lot of mouthful, isn't it? It's an epithelial tissue, and all of them have the word epithelium after them, okay? The word simple means one, okay? Simple means, in this case, one, and it means one layer. Squamous comes from the root word squama, which means scales, or squashed / flattened. So when we look at these cells are thin and they're flat, okay? So simple squamous epithelium is one layer of thin, flattened cells, okay? Pretty straightforward, isn't it? Then you've got these layers are going to be found in one place, pretty much. Your lungs, mostly, okay? So you can breathe in, get all the gases that you're sucking in, like the oxygen, and it will diffuse into the bloodstream. It's also in some of the blood vessels, the really, really small ones, the capillaries, and in the really small versions of the lymphatic vessels, okay? But again, all in the lungs so you can help absorb the oxygen as well as get rid of the carbon dioxide. And that layer is super thin. Now, if you look at it from the top, you don't see much, but you can see how they look kind of scaly looking, don't they? They're kind of scaled looking, okay? But that's a top view. Now, if you look at it a cross-side view, you can see it's only one layer thick for each one of them. There's only one cell per thing, okay? Here's a cell here, because you can see the cell. See the cell in the nucleus, cell in the nucleus, cell in the nucleus. These dark areas are the nucleus, so you see them one right after the other. But it's only one layer of cells thick. All right? So that's the first type. The second type is called simple cuboidal epithelium. Now that name should tell you everything you need to see with that particular name. It's one layer of cube-shaped cells. And the nucleus usually is going to be in the center of that cell. Now, obviously, we're talking about human cells, right? So they're not perfectly cube-shaped, but they're kind of squarish looking, okay? Now, since it's one layer, it's not going to be found on the skin, right? Because the skin is multiple layers. It's going to be found in places where you're probably not going to have a lot of contact with the outside world as far as grabbing and pulling. And one of the main places is in the kidneys. It helps you to absorb and get rid of all that cellular waste material, which again, you know, we urinate out. That's what gives the urine that color, is that waste material. Well, that helps to, when we push the blood through the kidneys, it helps to absorb through that, and then it releases that stuff into the urine, and then we urinate that material out, okay? You'll also find it in a few glands. We're not going to get too heavy into that right now, okay? And if you look at it again, it's the same idea. When you look close, you'll see what I'm talking about here. If I'm going to blow this up real quick, there we go. You can actually see each cell, right, is kind of squarish looking, not perfectly square, but squarish. And if this is a cross section of the kidney, that material oozes out these cells once it's been collected into this empty space right here that's basically got fluid in it, that it's like little tubes that come together and eventually flow out of the kidney into the bladder. Okay? Now, that is simple cuboidal epithelium. Okay? The third kind is called simple columnar. You can already see the pattern, can't you? Simple columnar is one layer of elongated cells. Okay? Now the nuclei, and these are going to be near the bottom. They're not going to be at the top. They're going to be at the bottom. Okay? They're going to be at the top, not the bottom. They're going to be at the bottom, not the top. They're not going to be in the center. Okay, so it's kind of like they float down at the bottom of this tube. Okay? You may or may not have nuclei, not nuclei, cilia on these cells. Little hairs, ciliary hairs. They kind of stick up like this. And they're useful for certain things, which we'll get to a little bit later. Okay? Now, since it's only one layer of cells thick, again, we're not going to be on the outside of the body where we can get damaged really. We're going to be on the inside. Specifically, we're going to be in the uterus, or the stomach, or the intestines. That's where it tends to be. And again, they're there for a specific reason. They're there to help in the stomach and intestines to either release chemicals or to absorb nutrients. In the intestines, they're there to absorb nutrients from our food. In the stomach, they're there to help release other chemicals. Okay? As well as some of them, there's some things that can be digested in the stomach. Well, we'll get to that when we get to the stomach a little bit later. Okay? So it secretes digestive fluid, absorbs nutrients, and protects some of the underlying tissues, primarily against, like, stomach acid. It helps prevent the stomach acid because some of them will make mucus from eating away at the stomach lining. Okay? Now, here's what I'm talking about. And again, this is kind of hard to see, so I'm going to kind of blow it up a little bit. But you've got the cells here. There we go, slide it over. Here are the cells right here. You can see the nuclei down at the bottom end of it. There's all those purple nuclei. Okay? And then right here, you've got some cells called goblet cells. They make mucus. And then right along the edge, that little line right there, this is the cilia on top. So when food comes through, we shoot some mucus out there and keep some of the acids in the stomach. Keep the acid from damaging this tissue here. Okay? Now, again, you can kind of see they're all in the bottom. Here, it's on the reverse side, they're all up here, but that's still the bottom of the cell. Okay? And again, the picture, the diagram, is a little bit better because it kind of gets rid of some of the stuff that you can't make head and tail of. Right? But this is what I mean. This is simple columnar epithelium. Okay? Now, that's the first three. The first three are simple. They're only one layer thick. The next one's kind of odd. It's got a nasty name, but it kind of helps you here, if you can read the name. It's called pseudo-stratified columnar epithelium. Okay, so columnar we know is column, elongated cells, right? But you take the word pseudo right here. take the word stratified right there. Pseudo means false. Stratified means layered. So pseudo-stratified, okay, pseudo-stratified means false layers. So in other words, this is tissue that looks like 2 or 3 layers, but when you actually get down to it, it's actually still only 1. Okay? So the cell layers, the cells appear layered, but it's actually still 1 layer. Okay? Looks like 2 layers, maybe 3, but it's actually still only 1 layer. Now, you'll find this a lot of times with goblet cells. Okay? Goblet cells, again, make mucus. Okay? And mucus is a good thing. Now, we get kind of disgusted by it because when we bruise it when we are sick or something, ew, right? But it is a vital material that our bodies have to produce. It helps prevent our stomachs from being digested. It also helps with catching materials in our lungs and our respiratory tubes as well. Okay? So you'll find that pseudostratified in the respiratory tubes, the trachea and the bronchial tubes, the bronchi. Okay? And what it does is it sits in there and it catches, because it's got little cilia, little hairs, it catches all the dust and debris that when we suck in air, it catches it and holds it. And then the mucus allows it to stick. And then every once in a while, you've all done this, you clear your throat, right? And then you swallow there right after. Well, what you're doing, basically, as gross as it sounds, is you're getting that stuff up and then swallowing all that debris and stuff back down your throat and getting rid of it. So you're basically cleaning out your lungs every so often. Okay? So when we look at it, you can see it it's odd looking, I know. But if we blow it up too, there we go. You can kind of see there's the little cilia, the little hairs. Here are the cells. Now if you look at the nuclei, they're kind of zigzagging, aren't they? Some of them are up high, some of them are down low, up low. So it kind of looks all, to me it looks all jumbled. And again, same thing here with the diagram that they drew. You can see how the nuclei are kind of up and down, up and down, up and down. But in reality, this is still only 1 layer. You just occasionally have some all kind of inked up like right in here. But it's still technically only 1 layer. So that's why they call it pseudo-stratified columnar epithelium. It looks like it's more layers than it actually is. Okay? All right. So that's the 4th type. The next 3 are all stratified. They're all layered. There's more than 1 layer. Okay? The next one is stratified squamous. Hey, there's squamous again. So a bunch of layers of flattened cells. Okay? Layers of flattened cells that are underneath, or that protect underneath layers. Okay? So again, the main place you'll find that is your skin. Okay? You'll find it in your skin, you'll find it in your throat, your mouth, your vagina, your anal canal, without getting too serious, any place there's an opening to the outside world from the inside of your body. Make sense? Okay. Mouth, up in the nose, back of the throat, the backside, all that stuff, right? Okay. Anywhere there's a natural opening to the outer world. Now, and again, its whole purpose is for protection from damage. Okay? The skin, the outer part of your skin out here, actually has something called keratinization. It gets this chemical called keratin in it that makes it harder and waterproof, kind of waxy feeling, so you don't lose water as well. Okay? Now, stratified squamous you can see really easily. It's layer upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of those cells. And as you get to the bottom, those are the living cells down there. But as they grow, they get pushed upwards towards the surface, and you can tell they're starting to flatten out, and by the time you get to the top, they show no flat. They're dead also, and they're keratinized. They have keratin in them to make them waterproof and thicker, harder. Okay? So that's stratified squamous. Well, here's a statement. If we have stratified squamous, we must also have stratified columnar, right? Excuse me, cuboidal. I got ahead of myself. Stratified cuboidal is 2 to 3 layers usually of cube-shaped cells. They're in places like the mammary glands that make milk, the sweat glands that make sweat, the salivary glands that make saliva, and the pancreas, which makes several chemicals. We're not going to get into that just right now. Get to digestion. We'll talk about what the pancreas produces. Produces quite a bit, actually. Okay? But it's only 2 to 3 layers. Usually the most I've ever really seen is 2. I don't think I've ever seen a picture of one that has 3 layers, but there probably is. That's